It is Mr. Corporate. That's right, I've returned. I'm shooting outdoors under the shade of a tree so that we're not getting any kind of illusion that I look super bald just because of the sunlight. So I'm trying this out as a happy medium. But what I was inspired. Yesterday, in real time for me, was Mother's Day, and that's when I had two different guys named Mike reach out to me, and they had similar last names, Thomas and Tomlin, and they asked me through social media, you know, my take on what they should do about their hair. Now what's interesting about them both is they were Norwood 3, and with one of them I said, you actually should keep rocking the beard, and he had like a number 2 guard, which is similar to mine right now. I actually suggested he go to a 0 when he's ready. 0, buzz cut, beard, because that seemed to really be an extension of who he was, and I could sense that about him based on the pictures I saw on there. Then there was the other guy who, same thing, Norwood 3, but actually for him I said, don't buzz it off. The hair that you've got, it actually really works for you. The guy didn't have a beard. I'm not sure if he could grow a beard, so I said, you know what? You actually look great as you are. I wouldn't change anything. And I think that's interesting because when you're at a Norwood 3 status, that's kind of where you're at. It is no man's land as far as you don't really look like you're balding. Yes, your receding hairline is more noticeable, but people are not going to see you and really think, oh, he's losing his hair. If anything, they might notice, okay, yeah, his hairline's starting to recede. But it's not the same as Norwood 4 when you've got a detached patch and you've got noticeable thinning. If you've got a Norwood 3 without thinning, then you've still got a lot of potential to go really either way. And that's, after doing both of those videos, that's why I thought, you know what, I need to make a follow-up to that just to kind of address that, because I couldn't have planned for that, you know? And so it's really interesting. So ultimately what I learned from that experience is, if you're truly a Norwood 3, where you've got more of what I'm gonna call like the Mickey Mouse, where it's round up here, but it still comes down here, and you don't have thinning, I think it's a matter of you deciding for yourself, where do I fall in this line of it? Because I can still swing either way. If I'm Norwood 3 without thinning, I can still swing either way. But ultimately, on one camp, there is more of the rugged look. You can grow a decent beard, and you're totally cool rocking the 0 guard, or at least a number 2, or you know, number 2, number 1, or 0, and that's one identity if you're Norwood 3. But you can also decide, you know what though, do I want to see what I can still pull off with the Norwood 3 hairstyle? Because there are still many hairstyles you can still do if you have the Norwood 3. There's still a lot of potential. There's certain things you can do to make it worse. Like for example, I wouldn't recommend trying to comb your hair straight back or spike it up or try to comb it down. I think you don't want to do things like that if you're Norwood 3. But you can still experiment with a lot of things, and you can still make things work with that situation. So I think if you are Norwood 3, I'm making this video as I've learned just yesterday, that's that point where you're not actually bald yet. Yes, you've got a receding hairline, but you can choose, do I want to go bald and bearded or don't I? And you've truly got that choice more so than anyone else. And here's why I say that. Because if you are someone who is Norwood 1, meaning you've just got the temples going back, but if I looked at you, you'd still be straight across here. Like that's, I'm gonna say Ryan Seacrest. When you look at him on TV, his hairline is perfectly straight. It's not until he turns this way you see it goes back a little bit, right? So it's almost like with a guy like Ryan Seacrest, he's more obligated to keep hair because he's got a perfect head of hair. In Norwood 2, it's starting to go up here, but you can still pull off just about any hairstyle, and it's not going to be a big deal. But Norwood 3, the hairline is going to be a little bit more noticeable, and while you couldn't pull off any hairstyle, you can still pull off a lot of hairstyles that it's going to be fine as long as you're not drawing attention to it. So it's like this gradient that we see, because by the time you get to Norwood 4 and 5 and beyond, where we're talking about noticeable thinning and bald patches starting to show up, at that point you can't pull off most hairstyles, and that's where it's almost like you are more obligated just to go ahead and pull off some sort of buzz cut to make it look like almost like you're not in denial of it. It's almost like an obligation. So like if you're Norwood 1 or 2, it's like you're obligated to keep a decent amount of hair, a decent hairstyle, because you are kind of obligated to it. Norwood 4 and beyond, you're kind of obligated to buzz it off. But Norwood 3, you're not obligated. And I think the only thing that you're really obligated to do is to figure out which one of these is going to best accommodate my identity. Do I want to go the rugged route, buzzed and bearded, or do I want to just still keep seeing what I can get away with? Now, where do I fall? Again, I classify myself, we all tend to agree that I'm more Norwood 2.5, because it's still a point here, but it's rounded here. So that's kind of that negotiation in between. And I think that's kind of the magic too of this channel, is that I get to determine that. I spent all of 2017 experimenting with the hairstyles, treating myself as if I were a Norwood 1 or 2. And then 2018 rolls around this year, I spent 3 months of my life pretending like I'm more like a Norwood 4 and beyond. Go ahead and committing to the buzz and the beard. But it's interesting now that I'm growing it out, I'm doing this as someone who can ultimately go either route, and I've been on both sides of the fence, and we all know I preferred the bald and bearded. But really, according to my own principles that I'm teaching in this video, is that because I'm still on the Norwood 3, Norwood 2 situation, I can still get away with most hairstyles, okay? But I've lived through the freedom of having the buzz and the beard. So really, and it's just so funny, because I couldn't have made this video if it weren't for yesterday, and both Mike Thomas and Mike Tomlin both reaching out to me and asking them that. And it put me into a mindset of Norwood 3 and realizing, and it's funny because for me, I can see that I identify so much with Norwood 3s, but I still identify so much with Norwood 2s. I truly am in the middle, not only psychologically, but what I can still get away with my hair. And even now, as you're looking at this, you can think, well, even though your hair does go back a bit, it almost may even make it look worse, and give it a few months and then you'll realize how much hair it looks like I have. It can be misleading. Of course, again, speaking of the Norwood 2.5, looking at my hair, this pretty much is almost like a Norwood 2.5 guard at this point, the equivalent of. It's been exactly 2 weeks since I've done the zero guard buzz cut. So it's funny just to kind of see how that works, because what we're going to see in the next couple weeks, this is going to grow out, and it may even actually show maybe some possible thinning, unless that rosemary oil has really kicked into high gear and really prevented that. So I've enjoyed making this video. I've enjoyed making the 2 Mike videos, Tomlin and Thomas. I like to learn, and I feel like I'm even learning in the process, and I dedicate this video especially to anyone who's Norwood 3, because it's not over. It's not like you're the Norwood 4 and beyond and you have to buzz it off. You still got options, as long as it's not rocking your confidence in a bad way. If you're looking and obsessing over your hairline too much, that maybe you do need just to go through the exercise of buzzing it off and getting it out of the way and getting it out of your system, and then realizing in hindsight, well, okay, I still have a lot more potential, and if I want to have hair, I can. I'm never obligated as a Norwood 3 without thinning. And that's the thing. As we're part of the hair loss community, I think it's important that we remind ourselves, you're not forced necessarily to have a certain type of hairstyle. But I like creating this video because it sort of creates and presents a template. So again, I want to close the video with the template. Here's the template, okay? If you have 0 hair loss up to a Norwood 2, you can pretty much get away with whatever kind of hairstyle you want, and it's going to look good as long as you got no thinning, okay? If you're 4 or worse, you're probably going to have to look to committing to some kind of buzz cut, whether it's a number 2 guard or even a 0. Probably want to experiment with the beard, because that's going to really help rock that look. But the Norwood 3, you basically get to decide which side of the fence you want to fall on. Do you want to experiment with your hairstyles and basically kind of act like you are a Norwood 1 or 2, or do you want to act more like a Norwood 4 and beyond? And that's kind of a theme of this channel. I mean, you've seen it happen in 2018, you've seen it in 2017. That's what I continue to do. I am in that middle ground where I get to experiment from all these different things. And I think it's good for this channel and for everyone watching, because yes, there's an obligation to keep hair when you have a good hairline. There's an obligation to buzz it off when you don't. But when you're in between, and who knows how long I'm gonna have this hairline, It's receded so slowly, like I've said in a recent video. Do I even have a receding hairline? Is it more like a receded hairline? You know, what if it just stops like this? And that's possible. There you go. Here's the whole thing about being in that mid area of the Norwood 3, or even Norwood 2.5 to Norwood 3, where you basically get to decide what your identity is going to be. Bald and bearded, or keep experimenting with the hair. As long as it doesn't crush your own confidence level, experiment is what I say if you're Norwood 2.5 to 3.